I don't know why everything looks uneven. Probably I'm not straight or something. Alright, whatever. Alright. Oh. Alright. Friends, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chav Ches, Daf 28 of Masechta Sotah. Friends. Starting on Daf Chav Ches of Masechta Sotah, it gets progressively harder for the next few days. Today, I guess, gradually gets more difficult. Tomorrow starts becoming impossible. And then I think the day after that is half impossible. Yeah, it's been quite a bit. Remember, if anybody tells you that the first daf of Masechta Sotah is difficult, you remind them that it's nowhere near as difficult as Daf Chav Tes of Masechta Sotah. Today we're learning Daf Chav Ches of Masechta Sotah. We still have one day until things really get nutty. Tuma and Tara. We're going to start on Daf Chav Zayin with Beis all the way at the bottom. Oso liman. Ho ho. So fact the Gemara that when the Mishnah says, right, we said at the very beginning of the Mishnah, at the beginning of the fifth parak of Masechta Sotah, Kshim Shamayim Bodkin Oso, Kachamayim Bodkin Oso, that just like the bitter waters check her to see if she had an affair, and if so, she pops. So then Oichit, if she had an affair, so then the adulterer also pops. Well, that's Taka the Shaila. Who is Oso? Ilem in the Baal, maybe it's Taka the husband. Right? Maybe if the wife had an affair, well then we also see what's the husband been up to. And if he's been up to no good, he pops. So Ilem in the Baal Mayovid. But what did the husband do? And if you say that, well, if he also was a shtikl nudnik, so then the bitter waters check him. Oichit, ki izbei oven bedide mi badkelo maya ledido, ho ho. But that's not true, because we know, let's go weiter, ve'atanya, we learn in the Brisa, v'nika ish mi'oven v'ishahi tisa savona, that when the pasuk says that the husband is clean from any sin, and the wife will bear her iniquity. Bizmancha ish menuka me'oven amayim bot knes ishto, eino ish menuka me'oven eino mayim bot knes ishto, ho ho. That the bitter waters are only effective, but let's read that again. Bizmancha ish menuka me'oven, as long as the husband hasn't been up to any. One second. Interesting. A unique sound. I know what that sound is. It's the sound of a youngster. A youngster crying. So don't worry, it sounds like that youngster. I can't know for sure. I don't want you to think that I'm a cold-hearted fellow who doesn't care about a youngster who's crying. I'm going to assume that youngster is with some kind of older, more responsible person who's making sure that youngster is doing fine. In fact, I don't even hear the crying anymore. So so as long as the husband hasn't been up to any nudnik activities, as long as the husband has not been up to any nudniktivities, amayim both knesisho. So then the waters check to see if his wife had an affair. But if the husband has been up to nudniktivities, so ain amayim both knesisho. So then the waters don't. So then the waters will not be checking if his wife had an affair. So it's impossible to say that, well, if the husband's been up to nudniktivities, so then not only would the wife pop, but the husband would also pop. But that's not true, because if the husband has been up to nudnik activities, so then the wife wouldn't pop bichlal, let alone him. So rather, let's say it's talking about the boel. So that if the wife had an affair and she pops, so then the adulterer will also pop. But less naked diktani seifa. But one second, if it's talking about the adulterer, so then say so explicitly, like we do in the next line of the Mishnah. That once she's a sotah, and we're not right, we don't know if she had an affair or not. We have to take her to the Beis Hamikdash, etc. So just like she is forbidden to her husband, she's also forbidden. Just like she's forbidden to her husband, she's also forbidden to the adulterer. So it says in the Seifa Bo'el. So why not also say in the Reisha, Kshem Shamayim Bodkin Oso, Kachamim Bodkin Esa Bo'el? Why does it say Oso? Why not just say it explicitly? So the Olam, the Bo'el, so the Gemara says, look, really it is talking about the adulterer. It is talking about the Bo'el. The Reisha, now the reason why it doesn't explicitly say Bo'el in the Reisha is Aidi Detana Oso, Toni Oso. That because the Reisha says Kshem Shamayim Bodkin, I'm reading from the Mishnah, Kshem Shamayim Bodkin Oso, Kachamim Bodkin Oso, right? The sort of accompanying term with Osa would be Oso. Seifa, I did the Tana Baal, Tana Boel. But in the Seifa, since it says Baal, right? Shem Shashur le Baal, so it says Kachasur le Boel. So it in both cases we're talking about the adulterer, but we used sort of the relative term in the Reisha. It says Osa, so it says Oso, referring to the Boel, and in the Seifa it says Baal, so it says Boel when referring to the Boel. But it is talking about the Bo'el and saying that if they had an affair, just like she would pop, so would he, the adulterer. Shenemar uvo, bap 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 bara. Now, as I said, the daf gets progressively more difficult. I'd say not necessarily difficult, but a little bit technical at this point. So, again, step by step, progressively, progression. Okay. Iboy lahu, bara. So that's the kasha. Ba'u uva'u ka'amar or uva'u ka'amar. Great. So the point is it the extra vav that we're getting excited about, right? Is it ba'u uva'u, right? Is it the fact that there's it could have said ba'u, but it says uva'u, and we're getting all excited by that vav? Oh, uva'u ka'amar. Or is the Mishnah saying that no, because it says uva'u twice, that is why we know that it's not just osa, but also oso. So is it from the repetition of the word, or the extra vav in the word? So ta shma, come in here. Kshem sha'asur leba'al kachasur leboel. That just like she is forbidden to the husband, she's also forbidden to the adulterer. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, nitme'ah vin nitme'ah. That it could have just said nitme'ah, but it says vinitme'ah, so the extra vav. Vadayin tibo, but still you can ask, one second, is it nitme'ah ka'amar, or nitme'ah vinitme'ah ka'amar? Great. Again, is it, when it comes to this nitme'ah thing, is it the duplication of the word nitma, so is that it says twice, or is it that it could have just said nitma, but it says vinitma, so it's about the vav? Again, we're trying to figure out, is it the vav we're excited about? Is it the duplication of the word we're excited about? Tashma, come in here. Midiktani Seifa, from the fact that it says after Rabbi Akiva, right? If we look at the Mishnah for a second. Kshem shamayim bodkin oso kachamayim bodkin oso. Shenemar uvo. Kshem she'asur leval kachasur leval. Shenemar nitma vinitma. Divrei Rab Akiva. All of that is Rab Akiva. Now, on Rabbi Yeshua, I'm still in the Mishnah. Rebbe Omer says, Rebbe, Shnei paimim amurim beparsha nitmia v'nitmia echel ba v'echel ba. Whereas Rebbe says it's not, right, it's about the fact, the duplication of the word, right? Shnei paimim amurim beparsha. And the fact that it repeats the word, right, nitmia and v'nitmia, so one is for the Baal and one is for the Bo'el. Okay, so therefore, so back in our Gemara where we are, so Tashma Mediktani Sefer, from the fact that it says after Rabbi Akiva, it says Rebbe Omer. Now Rebbe says Shnei Paimim Amurin Beparsha V'Nitmia, right? Nitmia V'Nitmia. It says right multiple times Nitmia. So Echad the Baal, Ve'echad the Bo'el. Once for the Baal, once for the Bo'el. So that just like she's asura to the Baal, she's also asura to the Bo'el. So we see that Rebbe is all about the duplication, which means that Rabbi Akiva, who was up until Rebbe, meaning in the Mishnah. The Mishnah up until then was Rabbi Akiva. After that was Rebbe. Rebbe is talking about duplication. So Memele, it implies that Rabbi Akiva would take the opposite approach, which is Mechlad Rabbi Akiva Vave Kadarish. So Rabbi Akiva is darshaning the Vavs. So there you go. So is it Uvo or Ba'u Uva'u? It's the extra Vav because that's Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva darshans extra Vavs. Now, hilkach, because Rabbi Akiva darshins all the extra vavs, so now Rabbi Akiva shisa kroi ksive. So it says uva'u 3 times in the Torah, but because each time it says uva'u, there's a vav, and we darshan the vav as well, so it's really 3 times 2, so 6 times. 6 things that we can learn out. So chad tzava dida v'chad tzava dida is I'll get a little technical. One is, I don't know, like God is like commanding the waters. You're going to go inside of this woman and do your thing in there. So one is that it's, for her, and one for the boel as well. One is for the execution of, so I guess one is commanding the waters to go in, and the other is commanding the waters to execute their powers, and that would apply to her, to her as well as to the boel. And one is sort of expressing, explaining that the waters are going to first collapse her stomach, and then her hot thighs and all that stuff. Okay, and so all that stuff applies both to her as well as to the boel. Fine. Whereas according to Rebbe, he doesn't learn the extra vav. So there's uva'u 3 times, but you can't learn out anything from the vav. So it's just uva'u 3 times. So it's also correct. So also one for the tzava, one for the asiyah, one for the yediyah, but just for her, not for him. Both can also minole. Well, then how does Rebbe know then that just like the waters check her, they also check him? Because he's only got 3 psukim, all of them are for her. So how do we know about him? So Nafkale, so Rebbe learns it out, Miditanya, from the fact that we're learning a Braise, Latzbos betin v'lan pil yorech bidno v'yirechel shel boel. That when it says Latzbos betin v'lan pil yorech, to make his like stomach and thighs pop. So bidno v'yirechel shel boel. It's talking about the stomach and the thighs of the adulterer. Ata omer bitno v'yirechel shel boel. So 1 second, is it really talking about the stomach and the thighs of the adulterer? O eno ela bitna v'yirechel shel nevelas. Maybe it's talking about her stomach and thighs. Kishehu, or hips, I guess. Kishehu, omer v'tzavso bitna v'nafla yirecha. When it says that her stomach and hips will, collapse. Hare bitna v'yirecha shel nevelas. Well, that pasuk, right, the v'tzavso bitna v'nafla yirecha is talking about her. So emor amani mekayim latzbos betin v'lam pil yorech. So what do we learn out from the pasuk of latzbos betin v'lam pil yorech? Bitna v'yirecha shel boel. It's talking about the stomach and the hips of the adulterer. Okay, so Rebbe learns out from Latzbos betin v'lam pil yorech that it applies to the boel as well. V'idoch. Now Rabbi Akiva, what does Rabbi Akiva do with the pasuk of Latzbos betin v'lam pil yorech, since he doesn't need it to teach about the boel? So ahu demoda la koyin de betin Bereisha v'hadu yerich. That is just saying that right from Latzbos betin v'lam pil yorich, the kohen is letting her know that first it's going to affect her stomach and then her hips, so that nobody, right? Because a different pasuk in the context of the klala mentioned first the hips and then the stomach. So nobody should say that makes no sense because the water is entering her body fakert, first the stomach and then the hips. So look, lemaisa it will first affect the stomach and then the hips in the order that it was drank. Fine. V'idoch, whereas Rebbe responds, imkain, if it was only to teach about the order of events, lichtov kra bitna v'irecha. So then let it just say bitna v'irecha, her hips and stomach, if it's just talking about letting her know the order. So my betin v'yorich, why does it say betin and yorich without the haze? Shmamina leboel. It's talking about for the boel that it affects him as well. So let's say that pasuk is only coming to teach that it affects the boil, and it doesn't teach the order of things. It should say his stomach and his hips. My betin v'yarich. Why does it betin v'yarich shmamina tarte? It teaches both things, that it affects him as well, and the order in which it will affect, which will be the stomach followed by the hips. Okay, fine. Moving on. Rabbi Yeshua, says Rabbi Yeshua, okay, all right, fine. I actually don't think that this is exactly related to this, but Tana Rabbanan, we learn in a brisa. Basically, it says nitma 3 times in the parsha of Sotah. Lama. How come it needs to say 3 times? Echad lebal, v'echad leboil, v'echad lechume. One is for the one is to say that she's asura to the husband. One is to say that she's asura to the boel, right? That even after they get divorced, whatever, she can't be with the boel. And one to say that she can no longer eat truma, right? So if they get divorced, she can't go home and then eat truma. If she's a bas kohen, she wouldn't be able to go back to her father's house and eat truma. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Yishmael has like a funny response because his response seems to be not on target. Rabbi Yishmael says that you don't need that third nitmi'ah to teach not about truma but about kihuna, right? Meaning, Rabbi Akiva had said that there are 3 nitma'ahs. One is baal, one is bol. The third one is to say that she's asura bitruma. Rabbi Yishmael understands the third nitma as referring to kihuna, that, for example, if the husband dies and she's now a widow, she'd be unable to marry a kohen. And he says, but you don't need that pasuk to teach me that about a kohen, because I can learn it out logically from a kal v'chomer. Kal v'chomer, umagrusha shemuteres l'truma. Well, a divorcee, right, a woman who gets divorced and she's a bas kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. In general, she's allowed to eat truma. Asur l'kihuna, but yet a grusha is not allowed to marry, a kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha. So you have this grusha who's allowed to eat truma, but she's asura l'kohen. So now a sotah, she asura b'truma, who's asura, it's more stringent, she's not allowed to eat truma. Enudin she asura l'kohuna. Certainly then she should be forbidden from marrying a kohen. So I don't need the pasuk to teach me that she's asura lekehuna. Of course she's asura lekehuna. Makes sense. She can't eat truma, so maybe she can't marry kahuna either. Period. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yishmael. The Gemara is going to ask tomorrow at the beginning. We're going to start with this kasha tomorrow, which is Rabbi Yishmael. I don't understand. Rabbi Akiva didn't say anything about kahuna. Fine. Now says the Gemara, "Matam lo mavi nitma vi lo nitma." Says the Gemara, how come the pasuk says that vihi nitma, she is definitely Tameh, she definitely had an affair. V'lo nitma, she definitely didn't have an affair. Im nitma lo mashosa, I don't get it. If she definitely had an affair, then why would she be drinking the mei sotah? She admitted already, she definitely had an affair. Im lo nitma, or we know it somehow. Im lo nitma, and if she definitely didn't have an affair, lama mashka, then why would the husband, if we know for sure that she didn't have an affair, so why would the husband have her drink the mei sotah to begin with? So yeah, exactly. It's not talking about where she definitely didn't or definitely did. Yeah, in those cases she wouldn't drink. It's talking about where we're not sure if she had an affair or not. Mikana Tadan, and we're saying that, and even though we're not sure, and it's a suffix whether she had an affair or not, she does not, right, she's asura she's asura, she can't, she's asura to her husband, they can't remain together. Mikana Tadan, the sheretz. And from here, you can apply this and compare this to a sheretz. Umasota shelo asaba shogeg kimezid ve'onis kiratzon. Sota, which is more lenient in that there's a difference between if she slept with this other person by accident or on purpose. Asaba safek kivade, and yet, or if it was against her will or consensual. So and yet, so even though it's more lenient in that there are these distinctions. And yet, when we're uncertain if she had an affair or not, she's asura. So, sheretz, for also basafik kivade, we treat this suffix, we're not sure if she had an affair or not, as if she definitely had an affair and she's asura. So, sheretz, a sheretz also bo shogeg kimezid va'onis kiratzun. So by a sheretz, where we don't distinguish between if you touch a dead sheretz by accident or on purpose, you're still going to be tamei. Enudin shi'aisebo safek kivadai. So then certainly a safek sheretz should be tamei, right? Because if sheretz is already more stringent in that, there's no distinction between if it was on purpose or by accident, you're going to be tamei. So then certainly even a safek would be tamei. Okay, fine. Welcome Shabbos. And now we continue the comparison between Sotah and Sheretz further. Ma Sotah Rishus HaYachid, Av Sheretz Rishus HaYachid. So let's also say that, Sotah happens in a private domain, right? This relationship. So this affair. So also let's compare that to Sheretz in a private domain, in Rishus HaYachid. Ma Sotah Davar Sheish Bo Das Yishol, just like a Sotah is somebody who is a human being who has intellect to ask whether she's tamei or tahora. Av sheretz davar sheish bo das lishol. So let's also compare that to a situation when a human being becomes tamei from a sheretz, right? When there's das lishol to ask. So mikan amru. So from here they said davar sheish bo das lishol. When we're talking about a human being who can be asked, so b'rishus hayachid sveiko tamei, b'rishus harabim sveiko tar. So b'rishus hayachid, so safek is tamei, right? Safek tumah b'rishus hayachid is tamei. And that's now from Sotah, right? Sotah, we're saying we're not sure if she had an affair or not, and she is. We treat her as tamei, and so that is safek tuma b'rishus hayachid in a private domain, and we're saying that it's tamei. Where am I? B'rishus harabim sveiko tahor, but in b'rishus harabim, however, the safek would be tahor. But if we're talking about something that we can't ask, that is not a human being with intellect that we can ask, so whether it's in Rishus Hayachid, whether it's in Rishus Harabim, if we're not sure about this, about Tumos, then it is Tahor. Friends, we're going to stop here. Tomorrow, Mamish, take out your brains already now for tomorrow. Let's just say that. Stuff is going to be an adventure. Anyways, that was Daf Chof Ches of Masechta Sotah. We talked about how just like it checks the wife, it also checks the adulterer, and if they're if they had an affair, then they would both die. And then we basically saw this machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rebbe about how they learn out. They learn out from the extra vav, they learn out from just a number of words. And then we saw that just like she's asura to the Baal, she's also asura to the Baal, she's also asura to eat trumeh. And then we saw Rabbi Yishmael comment also on the fact that she would be unable to marry a Kohen if her husband dies and she's a widow. Then that was the Chof Ches of Masechta. And then of course we learned out comparisons between Sotah and Sheretz to say that Sofek Tumah B'Rishus HaYachid is tamei and b'rishus harabim it is tahor. That is when we're talking about a human being who has intellect to ask, but that would not apply when it's not a human involving a human being who has intellect to ask. In that case, bein b'rishus hayachid, bein b'rishus harabim, sveiko tahor. Very interesting stuff. Friends, that was the Chof Ches of Masechta Sotah. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.